Kratom, ladies and gentlemen, should it be illegal? Should it not? Should it be regulated? Should it not be? The governor of the great state of North Dakota, Governor Kelly Armstrong, is calling a special session to deal with that when it comes down to laws of regulation of drugs or what you would perceive to be drugs. The one person that's going to be in charge of whatever comes out of that is going to be the Attorney General of the state of North Dakota. And the Attorney General of the state of North Dakota is Drew Wrigley, and he joins us right now. Mr. Attorney General, good to have you back on News and Views.
Thanks, Joel. It's good to be with you and your listeners.
Why are we doing this? Is it as big of a problem as what the governor is making it out to be?
Yeah, it sure is, and it's leapt onto the screen here, and emergency action was definitely merited. I learned of the dangers of kratom, pardon me, from folks over at our crime lab who have been monitoring this a little bit in recent years. There's a rapidly increasing use of these products, but also an dramatic increase in the intensity of what's being produced with kratom. And so they brought that to my attention. And then what I learned here in recent weeks was that there have been several deaths associated with the use of kratom in several of its forms here in North Dakota. And I immediately made the governor aware of that. We then called some quick meetings, and it was really apparent to everyone around the table that something needed to be done quickly. The Board of Pharmacy was already in the process of putting together an emergency rule. They've issued that. I really want to commend the governor for his quick action with regard to the executive order, which is basically a pause, right? It's a pause. The governor's not. He doesn't have authority to make laws that have interminable duration, but he could put a pause in here, which he did, and then call a special session when our elected legislative leadership and folks, legislators from around the state can come in and wrestle with this critical public health crises.
I want to ask you this, I don't want to argue about what you just said in terms of how serious of a product it is, but it's natural. I mean, it is. Right. It what it does to the brain, what it does if it's used too much, that stimulant, that sedative, everything that goes with it. But the reason I bring it up this way, Drew, is because you and anyone has a really hard time regulating pot. It's natural. You can grow it. You can grow it in your basement with a bunch of lights, right? Well, kratom is the same thing. It's just a different product, the way I understand it. And so my question, if I were back in one of those legislative seats, would not be whether or not it's serious and you're doing the right thing. It would be, how the hell do you do it? Yeah,
how do you do it? Well, from the very beginning, and those are central questions. From the very beginning of this discussion, from my perspective, the most important thing that was going to be happening was the public communication of critically important information for a product that's sitting out on the shelves that is all dolled up with colorful packaging and names and everything else. It looks like it's kind of a candy. Absolutely is focused on young people and drawing their interest. And we knew there to be dangerous, addictive, deadly qualities to this product, and it is completely unregulated. Between packages, even, which I'll get to in a second, you don't even know what you're getting package to package. This is not like buying Cheerios on the shelf and everyone has the same makeup, or for that matter, a 6-pack of beer, where every can of beer will have the exact same amount of alcohol in it by percentage. So we knew that we were dealing with that. We had to get the public information out, and the learning curve for North Dakotans, I think, has been pretty dramatic here, just like it was for those of us in elected office who have been made aware of this. And so people are learning a lot about it. And the biggest thing that can happen, Joel, is demand reduction, that people can realize how dangerous this is. I went into a smoke shop here in Bismarck when the governor and I agreed to have this press conference a couple days later. I went into a smoke shop, and there were two fellas in this smoke shop, and I'm not going to say what it is, because when I tell you this, they'll probably get fired. So I'm not going to mention which one I went into. And these two, I'll just say that these two fellows have been around the block, right? So I walked in undercover. I was dressed as the Attorney General of North Dakota. I walked in a suit and tie, middle of the day, walked in, and I asked the guy for kratom. And he kind of eyeballed me and said, what kind of stammered? He said, what dose are you taking? I said, I'm not. And he said, don't. First words out of his mouth, he said, don't. He said, this expletive is awful. And I kind of looked at him and I said, that I could buy this and take it out and give it to a kid in North Dakota. There's no age restrictions. There's no nothing. The other guy misunderstands what I'm saying. And he says, dude, you can't give that to kids. Don't give that to kids. And I looked at him and I said, I'm not giving it to kids. I'm not going to. We had a really nice conversation. I said, I'm not giving it to anybody. I got a different use for it. I didn't tell him I'm going to have a press conference. But then I turned to the other guy and I said, you seem kind of knowledgeable. Tell me. And he said, well, I've got it. And he has a physical ailment. And he said he's on prescription medication, has been a lot of his adult life, and said that he thought, well, I'd try something. And he used what you're pointing out. He said, I thought I'd try something different, I'd try something natural, right? So he said, I tried it. He said, I got addicted, and he said it was horrible. And I looked at him and I said, how long? Tell me about that process. How long did it take? He said, it wasn't even 2 weeks. I said, well, he could tell like I was really trying to soak all this up. And then he said, what was worse than how bad it was to be addicted to it? He said, getting off of it. And so then I asked him, okay, he said, I just knew I had to go cold turkey. So he did. He said, and then he described that he was just really sick and got through it, and he's not on it anymore. All right. Well, then I looked. There was so much of this stuff in the shelves, and the guy said, you have no idea how much of this we sell. You really, when you immerse yourself in the issue even a little bit, you can see it's being used very, very widely, very broadly across the state in a lot of different forms. It's completely unregulated, and when you test it, you don't even know the amounts of kratom that are in there, and it's highly addictive, highly dangerous, and we have proven here in North Dakota, deadly for too many people. We've lost dozens of lives just since last year. They only started testing for this, Joel, since last September. So I personally am so pleased. The media has been so serious about taking up this message to say, let's get this information out and see what people think about this. And I'm imploring the legislature to withhold judgment until they gather and hear from experts. I am not expert in this. I have seen what we know so far. I know that I've spoken with experts. They make compelling cases about what this product is, what it is not, and what it represents as a danger to the health of North Dakotans. I implore the legislature to not do what too many are already doing, start to make judgments based on something they maybe heard anecdotally or an article they read. Like, let's really do the job of legislating. And I know that most of them will, and I'm imploring all of them to wait till you have the opportunity to hear from medical experts, hear from the people at the North Dakota Crime Lab, hear from people who come in, addiction folks, and medical professionals.
But let me interrupt you there. Drew Wrigley, Attorney General of the state of North Dakota, they did hear that. They had an opportunity to hear that. This was in front of them for a vote last legislative session. It was killed by the Republican legislature, Drew. It was. I'm not being partisan here. I'm being factual. No. This was in front of them, and they had the very people you are talking about present that case, and they killed the bill.
Yep, you're right. And that was brought up in one of the meetings that we had, and I said to everybody, with due respect, it did not get a full vetting and hearing. The governor of North Dakota didn't know that was going on. The Attorney General of North Dakota didn't know that was going on. The majority leader of the Senate was in on this meeting, and he didn't have really eyes on and awareness. It's one of those things. The issue came in; it was still really new, and it didn't get the traction and the assessment that there's 80 days down there, and they didn't bring it to some of the folks. I'm not criticizing them. I'm saying they raised the trial balloon. It didn't get the full attention that it merits, and also as the crime lab that I have the privilege to as one of my agencies or entities here within our agency, the crime lab folks said the use of this is skyrocketing even since last winter, and the intensity and prevalence of these products. I should tell you, and your listeners also, Joel, the packages that I bought 3 packs of these products, and I had them out there as props at the press conference. I wanted people to see like how they're named, what the packaging looks like. They were confiscated from me by the folks at the lab or at the press conference, and they said these are going to be illegal in 2 days. And they kind of laughed. They took them. They said, Drew, we're going to test these, and we'll let you know what we find. You know what they found? Completely mislabeled. There were 2 2 or 3 other hallucinogenic items that were in those products that weren't named on the label in there, and the dosing, if you want to call it that. The packaging doesn't call it a dose; it calls it a serving. Incidentally, they were off because they're not regulated, and these aren't pharmacists that are making these things, and they're putting them into packages that look neat and lower people's concern and make it seem very normal to take it. And what the science tells us, there's nothing normal about it. It's dangerous, it's addictive, and deadly.
So what is the goal? Is the goal to have legislation passed that has accurate labeling and an awareness for the purchaser? Or is the goal and is the legislation that's going to be brought forth by the individuals doing the governor's work, which both you and I know, the governor's talking to legislators saying, here's the bill, somebody introduced this. Is the goal going to be make it illegal? One of those two things is going to be presented by the governor. Which one?
Right. Well, there'll be a couple of different options from everything that I understand. I'm still waiting to see what form the legislation is going to be in. But there's going to be some options, and that's what the legislature is going to have to decide. Do they want to draw a line, or do they want to have a complete ban? Because of where we are, I like where we are right now. We've got a statewide ban on kratom, the possession, creation of these products, transferal of them, and use. And so we've got that in place right now until there can be a legislative judgment. And that's why I'm imploring the legislature to wait until they have heard all of the evidence and information, not the anecdotes from a legislator or somebody else who uses it because they've got a sore knee or whatever it might be. Let's listen to what the science says on this thing and make those judgments. Because my goal is what's already in place here now: public information, public awareness, and then a discussion by experts. And then the legislature, that's what they get paid to do, draw those lines where they think it should be. Should there be age restrictions? Should some of these products, 7-OH and some of the others, which, by the way, to make clear, there's only kratom. Some people are acting like there's, God made this kratom over here because it's natural, and then there's this kind over here that the devil made, and it's synthesized. It's all the same. They're all kratom. It's just it's a question of how intense it is, its concentration, and the scientists will make that clear to people.
Let's talk about the process, because both you and I understand it quite well. You've got a legislation that's going to come forward with kratom that they had the opportunity. They didn't even pick it up on the study. So we both acknowledge that. And now we're going to have a special session. As the governor pointed out, he's calling it based upon this. I'm with you. You'd have my vote if I was sitting right there. No problem. You would have had my vote during the session. But when you open up a session, the horse gets out of the barn and people get a chance to go ahead and bring other issues in front. And so you knew when I called you, I was going to ask you this question. As Attorney General, can you legally then stop any non-disclosure agreement by a political subdivision in relation to data centers? Can you back that from a legal sense?
I'm actually researching, as you mentioned this, we're doing some research here into whether the non-disclosure agreement, the existence of it and the content of that non-disclosure agreement, whether that can be made public itself, not the substance of what's in there, but the agreement and what it calls for. Doing that research right now, and it's going to be a question because that issue is being bandied about, and I had a couple of inquiries from
when are you going to know?
Media. I would, in the next few days. I think that'll be a pretty quick research into that, Joel, about that issue because it's something the public doesn't. We're well aware. The public doesn't like things being held outside of its view, and I've worked mightily in the last 4 years on a host of issues, and you and I both know, to make sure that we've got daylight on things and that the public is aware. There's tremendous power in public awareness on a variety of issues, and a lot of reform comes from daylight being on things because the public knows what the facts are and what it wants to push for through its elected body. The
governor of North Dakota on this very show broke news that local political subdivisions should not sign non-disclosure agreements. I don't know if there's a difference between that and actually having a law that does stop them. But I am very curious about the decision you're going to make going into the session. I have 1 minute, Mr. Attorney General.
Yes, sir.
I'll let you make the final comments.
Well, again, I'm calling on legislators and the public to just withhold judgment until you know the expert testimony. I've seen legislators say things like, well, we don't want to outlaw this drug because if we do, they'll use more serious drugs. This is a serious, addictive, dangerous, deadly drug. Don't kid yourself. It's just not illegal yet permanently. So withhold judgment. Others have said, well, some people are using this for good purpose. Well, some people would say the same thing about a host of different drugs. Wait until you hear it from the experts. Some others have urged. It sounds like they went to ChatGPT and read something and heard that it's not that dangerous. Please withhold judgment. Hear from the experts, and then let's make a unified approach going forward through our elected officials. I know the legislature is going to take this seriously, and I applaud the governor in calling the special session. And we look forward to engaging in this with our elected officials to make a good decision for the people in North Dakota.
And we will cover this all the way through. You know what, Mr. Attorney General, I took Advil today, and that's good enough for a lot of these people because I put a fish hook through my finger last night. So appreciate you coming on. Thanks for coming with us here on News and Views.
Good to be with you.